Hello and welcome to the Undressing the Spirit podcast, where sex and spirit go hand in hand. Join me, Tamara Powell, on a no-holds-barred adventure into the psyche and beyond every conceivable limit. Hey, welcome back to the Undressing the Spirit podcast. I am so jazzed that you are here with me today, sharing a little sacred space, exploring your world and mine. And before we get to today's really intriguing conversation with the incomparable Sama Morningstar, I wanted to tell you about a shift in my business that's been going on over the past year. Like so many of you, I have what I consider the portfolio life, right? I am a podcaster. I am also an adjunct psychology professor at the University of West Florida. I've got kids. I have this private practice where I do counseling. I also train other coaches and creatives at the Psych Intuitive Institute. And I do coaching. And that is what I want to drop a little tidbit on for you guys today. Some of you have asked me about my coaching packages, and I have slowly over the past year been decreasing the amount of one-on-one sessions that I do in person for counseling and really shifting over into transformational coaching packages. And so I have only a handful of spots open this next month, but for those of you who are interested, go to ariatherapy.com/coaching to learn more. I am probably going to be able to take on 3 to 5 in the month of March. And if this is something that speaks to you, please shoot me an email. Now, without further ado, let me introduce my guest, Sama. Sama is a womb whisperer and feminine empowerment revolutionary who is impassioned about addressing what ails us both personally and globally by helping women to heal, awaken, and empower their connection to the womb. She guides women to recognize and begin to consult their own womb energies as a powerfully direct and potent source of wisdom and guidance for their lives. This process alone brings powerful healing to womb pain. You know, girls, things like menstrual pain, fibroids, endometriosis, hormone imbalances, menopausal symptoms, pre or post hysterectomy symptoms, etc. Much of our womb pain results from generations of systemic suppression, often very violent, of our womb wisdom, she believes. Sama's own personal healing journey to liberate her from these traumas has included extensive training and professional experience in massage therapy, energy medicine, earth and feminine reverential spirituality, shamanic healing, therapeutic work and breath work, tantric healing, dance therapy, art therapy, therapeutic poetic writing, and warm water therapies. Whoa. Let me tell you, I first came across Sama on Facebook where she was giving away a few free introductory sessions in these womb healing things, and I happened to win one of them. And I was super excited to talk to her because she said they would be perfect for someone who was going through a transition, which I totally was, both through a divorce and also my business, like I just talked about. She also said that it was really good, as I mentioned in her bio, for any woman that has undergone a surgical procedure there. And I had had 2 cesarean sections, and I'd also had a balloon ablation. So I was intrigued to see what I could learn from my womb and how that might apply to my life and business. And let me tell you, within just half an hour, I was blown away. And I think you're going to be too. So without further ado, I give you Sama. Welcome back to Undressing the Spirit. Like I mentioned, my guest today is Sama, and I am so excited, you guys, for you to hear all about what it takes to be a womb whisperer and all of the incredible healing journeys that she takes both women and sometimes men on as they recognize and heal their traumas. So welcome to the show, Sama.
Hi there. Thank you for having me.
I am sure that as soon as I said womb whisperer, everyone was like, what? What is it that you do, and how did you come to this journey?
Well, what I do is, I'll answer that first.
Sure.
I primarily help women to get in touch with the deep wisdom and power in their wombs and heal anything that's in the way of fully expressing their full empowered femininity. So many women experience their womb as a place of discomfort, often as an inconvenience with our menstrual cycles, something that's getting in the way of living life how we think we should be living it. And this causes all kinds of suffering for women. The truth of the matter is, our womb cycles directly connect us to the natural powers of creativity and life generation that is cyclical, as we can see in the cycles of the earth, the cycles of nature, the cycles of the moon, the cycles of the universe. Everything cycles through the process of birth, building up, creation, degeneration, and death. And the cycles of our womb also do that. We build up, we're ready for creating, we build up and nourish what we're creating, and then things slough off, degenerate, and pass away. And then that feeds and nourishes this renewal of the life cycle. And when we try to be super linear and not recognize that cyclical nature in our bodies and in our lives, we end up with, first of all, severe womb pain. And many women suffer greatly from trying to ignore or suppress or decentralize these cycles in our lives, as well as energy depletion, other kinds of body pain, intestinal. I mean, I can list a whole slew of common ailments that we can link back to this disregard for our natural cycles. And so what I help women to do is to reconnect with that source of wisdom. And many women who teach us how to do this, I have one colleague who gets really in detail about how to track our menstrual cycles. And she talks about using our menstrual cycles as our own life coach.
Wow.
And for me, when she said that, I was like, yes, that's what I've been trying to say, is that this is our wombs are our most direct, or one of the most direct and potent pathways to access our inner wisdom, our essence of who we are, and our connection to divine source, to the greater wisdom and ancestral wisdom. And so helping women, I'm just so passionate about helping women to reconnect to that. We've been taught in our modern culture to disregard and undervalue and see as an inconvenience or something that should be ignored, these womb messages. And so listening to them, just simply that, is so powerful. So many women, when they start to even just pay attention to their cycles as possibly something of interest, just that beginning step, suddenly their womb symptoms, their menstrual pain, their emotional and hormonal instability, all of that is alleviated tremendously, immediately, simply by listening, simply by saying, oh, okay, I'm going to pay attention. This could be something valuable here. And it's just this deep longing to be heard and recognized from the womb that says, of course, if you have this great wisdom and you're shouting it out and you're getting louder and louder and louder and like banging on the door, it feels like that's what the womb is doing with this womb pain and all these physical symptoms we end up getting, and the womb is like bleeding and crying and weeping and saying, hey, listen to me, and then you finally listen. Then it says, okay, we can relax now and we can get in partnership.
That is so Powerful. My mind's already running off in a million different directions from just those first few minutes of what you're saying. There's so much richness here.
Yeah.
And if I'm understanding you correctly, it's sounding like the womb in many ways is just like our psyche, where it just wants to be, as you said, seen and understood and noticed and listened to.
Yes. And, you mentioned the psyche. One aspect that I work with a lot in this womb work is the subconscious. And the subconscious resides in the cerebellum, which is considered to be the feminine brain. And it's the first part of our brain to develop while we're in the womb, while we're developing. And so it has access to all of these things that are considered feminine, our intuition, our body sense, our ability to feel, all of our senses, our dreams, and all of our emotional development. It begins to happen there in the cerebellum before the cerebrum, the more masculine part of the brain, which is in the front of the brain, starts to develop. And then that develops the logical thinking and starts to translate what we're experiencing in our feminine intuition into logical thought.
Exactly.
And that can be disrupted. That translation, that connection can be disrupted by traumas in the womb. And this is a second part of the work that I do. And this is where I can start to help men who don't have wombs, or even women who might not have wombs, although this womb cycling, womb listening, even for women who have had their wombs removed, is very healing, because we retain an energetic womb. There's an energetic, just like when someone has a limb amputated, they can still feel the energetic of that limb. I've actually had amputees grope me, or one amputee grope me during a massage, and I could feel it.
Interesting.
And so women with hysterectomies retain their energetic womb and can benefit tremendously in healing the original cause for their hysterectomy through this womb listening work that I do. And then the second part of it is going back through shamanic healing work and energetic healing work and breath work to our experiences in the womb, to retroactively make connections between our psyche, our body, re-empower our feminine development that gets sort of short-circuited when there's traumatic experiences in the womb. So that can include anything traumatic that happened around conception. So if your parents were not completely in love, totally blissed out, making love with each other and having this awesome mutually orgasmic sexual experience when you were conceived, which how many of us really had that experience?
Right.
My parents were on drugs when I was conceived. So I always wonder, okay, how did that affect my genetics, because our genes are affected very much by our environment. Different genes are turned on or turned off based on the bath of chemicals and hormones and whatever is happening in the environment in the womb at that time. And if your mother is on drugs, if your father is on drugs, and that egg and that sperm are bathing in stressful hormones or whatever that might be, that influences how our genetics actually start to express themselves as we develop. And so everything that happens during those essential first moments of formation as a human body, from those moments onward, is so essential to who we are. It's like a blueprint for our lives on all levels. We learn everything, so much about what it means to be a human inside our mother's womb. We're just downloading everything from her. And so every single one of her experiences are, for me personally, my mother was 17 years old and didn't know anything about human fertility at all. And she was doing drugs and partying with her boyfriend, and she finally started to put a few things together. And she asked him, "What would happen if I got pregnant?" And he said, "Oh, that would be your problem." So she was already pregnant with me at that moment in the very early phases. Can you imagine the amount of adrenaline and other stress hormones that just flooded through her at that moment, directly thinking about me?
For sure.
And what a profound effect that made on my development and the expression of my genetic development. And her anger, she immediately dumped my dad. Okay. Mm-hmm. So his genetics were already in me, making me. Mm-hmm. And she rejected that half of me right then and there, violently.
So painful.
Yes. And I'm not the only person with a story to tell you like this, right? And so having those painful experiences, you could say that was the beginning of my journey on this healing path. Because then being born to my mother, the beauty of it is she found the resilience and strength to deal with her situation. She became a lifeguard on the beach down in Southern California while she was pregnant with me. So I got to, in order to, that was the best paying job she could get, given her skills at the time, and to pay for her, birth and healthcare as a single mom at that time. She had to do the best she could do. And that was a great choice because I got to swim around in the ocean with the dolphins and the whales while I was developing. So I'm super grateful for that, But nonetheless, I could go on and on with my story of continued traumas throughout my gestation, birth, infancy, early childhood. As a young mother, she did the best she could, but she didn't have any guidance. And this is such a common story right now.
Yes.
And I was very fortunate to have a mother that had the wherewithal to pull a lot of things together and stay connected to me in many, many ways. There are many people whose mothers were so severely abused themselves or, suffering from generations of violence and addiction and all the things that we're suffering from in our society these days, mental health issues, that they can't even connect with their babies at all. And so many of us are suffering from these things. The beauty of all of this is that our original genetic blueprint can be restored. That a lot of what is carried down that's considered to be genetic is actually epigenetic, in that the environment has influenced how our genetics are being expressed, not necessarily the hard genetics, but the soft genetics, how it's being expressed. So things are being turned off or turned on. And that can be influenced. We can go back and recreate those early experiences. And that's where psychology and somatic therapies and trauma resolution therapies, breath work, all of the things that I list in my bio come into play, is that those kinds of meditation, all these kinds of self-healing experiences that we have actually can go very deep into our bodies and our genetics and say, oh, actually, you know what? This is a different environment now. Now I can turn on a different set of genetic expression and revise my blueprint. And going back to our experiences in our mother's womb is one of the most potent ways to do that, because that's when we initially turn this or that on or off in our genetics to express certain pathways, certain designs in our bodies and in our emotions. And so when we go back and revisit and reframe that time for ourselves shamanically and through breath work, that's where all the rebirthing work and all of that starts to come into play. Then we're not being secretly run by these traumatic blueprints from those early pre-memory times. And we can rewire our whole nervous system, our whole bodies to live in a new way. And in actuality, that healing can go back energetically through the energetic healing to previous generations. So right now, what I'm noticing as I'm doing this work and deepening this work for myself, when I go through a phase of revisiting and rewiring my whole system from something in the womb, my mother calls me up and she says, "Oh, I'm going through something," right? And so then we talk about, okay, this is what I'm working with right now, this time period, this in the womb, this thing that happened. And then she goes through and all this awareness. Like I just went through this whole process of revisiting a specific time frame of my development in the womb. And I went back and I had a conversation with both my grandmother and my mother, and they both revealed secrets to me about our genetic matrilineal line.
Whoa.
That they had never told me before.
That's incredible.
And they had been thinking about me and they had been feeling these connections with me. And so we can, just as in many Native American teachings and shamanic teachings talk about, we can heal back 7 generations.
That's incredible. Seriously.
Yes, it is. Especially, it is. I know. You tell me about it.
The therapist in me is cheering, not only because are you talking about epigenetics and neuroscience, but you're also crossing over to my other favorite bridge of spirituality and ways that we can integrate both to create long-lasting, deep change, both forwards and backwards. I mean, it just doesn't get better than that, Sama.
No, it doesn't. That's why I'm so jazzed to get up in the morning, you know?
Yes, I can certainly understand that. And so when I met you, I spoke with you briefly about how having gone through 2 cesarean births and then a tubal ligation and then a balloon ablation to burn out the lining of my uterus because I had adenomyosis, right? Cousin to endometriosis. It was fascinating to me to hear the correlations between some of my physical experiences and what you were talking about at the top of the hour of like looking at things like an inconvenience. And, I tend to be that whole like powerhouse in business sometimes. And a period, as we, look at it in the Western culture, can just slow you down. Like nobody has time for those cramps and the messiness of it all. And our conversation really helped reshape that for me. And thinking about the power and the magic and, I was already charting with the moon and all of that, but it really upped it for me in a whole another nuance.
Yeah. And when you look at how business, especially women in business, is evolving and how we are needing to evolve. If you look at business globally and
right.
the powerhouse overriding the needs of, or the concerns of ecology or social concerns, that the tendency is in business, the dominant tendency in business is these days. And this is very up in our awareness of how business that just completely disregards basic ecological concerns.
For sure.
Of the earth, and how detrimental that is for us as a species and our global experience as a species, all for the benefit of a few people that think they're benefiting from it. And yet, as we pollute the environment and degrade the environment, everyone suffers. And what we think is this great gain, what those people who are having that approach think is this tremendous progress, is actually undermining the survival of our species.
Right. And right down to the individual level, that's just something else I find fascinating about your work, because not only are we talking about the exosystem and the environment, but also the idiopathic levels of the individual and denying the sacred feminine and losing touch with that whole yin receptive side. And so I know for me personally, as a woman in business, I have to remind myself that it's okay to go within and to just be and to tap into that intuition that's always there, that I don't always have to go, go, go with that whole linear, very masculine driven side
Exactly.
of business.
Not only is it okay, but it's necessary
Right?
for
Preach.
sustainability, for us to be able to really develop, truly develop and grow and progress. We can't just be focusing on how much money we're making.
Mm-hmm.
Money may put food on the table, but it doesn't make sure that we can keep growing food that's nourishing,
Right.
that's truly nourishing.
Mm-hmm.
And so the same, I'm using this bigger global picture as a metaphor for what happens. And you picked up on that on the individual level. And there is a feminine revolution in business that's happening that I
Mm-hmm.
am drawn
Yes,
to
ma'am.
and am part of. And that's why I call myself a feminine empowerment revolutionary,
You sure are. Yeah.
because the importance of self care is a big thing right now in feminine business approaches, right? You see all this
Right.
stuff online, all these coaches talking about balancing your self care, making sure that your business growth is sustainable. Because how many businesswomen have been doing this masculine linear model of go, 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 power through it, do it all you can to increase the bottom line, right?
Right.
Only to become energetically depleted,
Mm-hmm. Doesn't
burnt
take long
out.
either.
It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
take long, completely burnt out, and then they crash. And then what
Right.
happens to what everything that you need to do to maintain your six-figure business?
Mm-hmm.
It crashes. And so, because you can't keep up with that. And so, what our menstrual cycles ensure is sustainable, regenerative growth.
Ah, I love it. I love that.
And so when we listen to our wombs, and our womb comes in and says, and comes maybe, like mine did this last month, came, on with my menstruation several weeks early and shifted, because
Mm.
that told me, okay, I need to, this is now is when I need to rest, not in 2 weeks when I had it in my calendar page.
Right.
It's now.
Right. I had a quick question about that. Yes, noticing that your cycle can change, even move forward, sometimes, with the new moon or the full moon, etc. I have also noticed, and I'm wondering if this is a common phenomenon, that when I change lovers, not that that happens often, people, but when that has happened in the past, my entire cycle swapped too. So say I was ovulating with the new moon and menstruating with the full moon, it actually did a complete 180. Have
Mhm.
you seen that happen a lot?
When you change lovers,
Mm-hmm. Or
well,
business positions, or like when there's a change in life, I have noticed that, yeah, there's a
absolutely.
womb change.
Yeah, there's definitely a womb change, and our womb is responding to give us something that we might be needing. So
Right.
what I found, or asking for something that might be needed in order to adjust to the changes. So what I found
Interesting.
is that I recently shifted. I had been regularly for quite a number of months, which is odd for me. All through my life, I've always just sort of cycled through so that I was just a few days
Mm-hmm.
earlier
Mm-hmm.
each month, so that I was always cycling on a slightly different phase of the moon,
Right.
right? And so I was getting the flavor of menstruating on all the different phases of the moon.
That's fascinating.
And then I started cycling, menstruating on the new moon, and really going into that deep inner mystery of
Mm-hmm.
the darkness. And then
Right.
ovulating on the full moon, being
Yep.
full blown in full blossom as in the full light of day. So that this is a very common thing. And in fact, in menstrual moon lore, that's talked about as the white moon cycle.
As opposed to the red moon cycle, right?
Exactly.
Which is the reverse of it. Right.
And that's what happened to me recently is after several months cycling that way, I had a big switch, like 10-day jump, 20, over a couple of months, two 10-day jumps that landed my menstruation now on the full moon, which is the red moon cycle. And the difference between the two is that, well, first of all, there's historical associations that the white moon cycle is the good mother. This is what it means to be, it's most conducive to making babies, doing the mothering thing, to that role of the womb. And that is the one role of the womb that is the most accepted and honored in our society, even though much of it is still considered to be an inconvenience, even a disease.
Yes.
And treated that way.
So sad.
All right. But it still is the one sanctioned function of the womb. And so the white moon cycle, there's this mythology that in our patriarchal culture that has infiltrated into our moon mysteries teaching sometimes. And I've seen this in my online group. I just have been communicating with a member of the group saying, hey, I just went to this feminine wisdom workshop and they were talking about, how we all got to get back to that cycle she didn't say the white moon cycle, but she described it. And that's how everyone at one time, all women were doing that in synchronicity. And we got to get back to that, and how can we do that? And the thing is, right? And I'm like, all right, how do I respond? And the thing about it is that the red moon cycle is really conducive to all the different ways that a womb can be creative. So menstruating on the full moon brings all of those secret mysteries of femininity up into the light of the full moon for creation. And it's not as conducive to procreation, making a baby necessarily, although you still can, but there are, there's methods to making a baby when you're on that cycle. People talk about having to do something a little different to enhance your fertility and all of that. But what it is super conducive to is a woman's creativity in other realms. So spiritual healing work, artistic creativity, artistic expression. Okay, well, guess what? That's unsanctioned in our current cultural climate for women to be powerfully creating culturally and socially and of their own inner essence, bringing that up and out. And so there's a sort of a taboo around cycling on the red moon. That, and so there's been a very interesting conversation holding space for that awareness to arise and say, how have we even internalized patriarchal ideas into our very conceptualization.
Even now in our sacred female circles, we're still having some subgrouping going on. That's fascinating.
Exactly. Yeah.
Sama, you offer a number of different ways for people to connect with you. Do you want to briefly describe those? Like you offer just like these cool calls and you've got circles going on and I've seen meditations. What are some of the ways that people can connect with you? Because I know they're going to want to research this further.
Yes. Well, you mentioned calls. I have a number of introductory one-to-one services that people can check out on my website booking page at samamorningstar.com. And I do a lot of introductory talks and storytelling. I really enjoy diving into folk tales and reawakening the ancient wisdom. Folktales are treasure trove of ancient feminine wisdom that we can sort of resurrect, because that's how women used to initiate young girls into the feminine mysteries. And so folktales, mythology, divine mythology, resurrecting the goddess mythologies from the suppression and all of that. That could be a whole other call talking about that. But anyway, so
I love it.
I do storytelling and, various topics that are inspiring in the moment. I love doing Facebook Live. So my Facebook group is called Luna Wave Womb Awakening Grove. And it's called a grove because I'm so involved in an organization called Tree Sisters. And it's a big mother organization about planting trees to regenerate the earth. And then we each go off and do our little grove of regeneration. Mine is about womb awakening. So
wow.
I highly recommend checking out treesisters.org as well. And so,
awesome.
So my Facebook group is Luna Wave Womb Awakening Grove. And in that group, I have members doing guest speaking engagements, talking about all of these topics. And I do little sample womb meditations. I'm getting ready to do some womb yoga workshops, and I'll be announcing those on my Facebook profile. I do a lot of announcements of things just on my Facebook profile. I think I'm the only Sama Morningstar on Facebook.
I think you are too, which is really helpful.
Yeah.
You are such a treasure trove. Thank you so much, Sama.
Oh, you're so welcome.
Thanks for listening to the Undressing the Spirit podcast. I pray you found some inspiration and titillation today. As always, I am forever grateful for 5-star reviews, comments, and subscriptions on iTunes and anywhere else you may be listening to this broadcast. Please note the information provided is not meant to convey professional, psychological, or medical advice. If you could use such services, I highly recommend seeking them out from someone you trust. To get in touch with me personally, please check out ariatherapy.com or talesfromatrapezoid.com. Until next time, everyone.